I make my living identifying threats before they become disasters. It's my job to sense danger before anyone else even sees it coming. But somehow, I miss the most dangerous one of all, sitting right across from me at the dinner table. The moment my wife handed me divorce papers with that smug little smile, she probably thought she'd pulled off the perfect victory. What she didn't realize was that I was already one step ahead. I'd uncovered her little getaway plan to Vienna with her new man and using my money to fund it. She thought she'd orchestrated the perfect betrayal, but what she didn't know was that it was all about to blow up in her face. Name's Liam Sinclair. I'm 44, and for the past 2 decades, I've built a career out of protecting VIPs from threats they never even knew were there. Kind of ironic, right? I can spot a sniper's nest or a planted device from a block away, but I never saw the cracks forming in my own marriage. It was right around the time fall rolled into Philadelphia that things began to shift. The leaves were changing color, and apparently, so was my wife. Rachel had made a name for herself as one of the top luxury event planners in the city, handling everything from high society galas to political fundraisers. She ran her events like military operations, every detail precise, every outcome flawless. I admired what she built. I really did, even when it meant she was always working late or booked up on weekends. That's part of marriage, isn't it? Showing up for each other's ambitions, even when it's inconvenient. But the first real warning sign came during Senator Thompson's re-election fundraiser. I was in charge of the senator's security team, and Rachel was running the event itself. A routine setup for us. We'd done this kind of thing more times than I could count. But something about that night felt off. The way she interacted with David Bradford, the senator's new finance director, it wasn't just business. There was too much laughter, too many lingering touches that crossed the line of professionalism. Call me old-fashioned, but brushing fake lint off someone's suit and whispering in their ear? That's not in any event planning manual I've ever seen. On the drive home, with the city lights bouncing off the windshield as we crossed the Delaware River, I kept my tone casual. Nice event tonight, I said. You and Bradford seem to be getting along pretty well. Her fingers clenched around her phone just a bit. Who? Oh, David. Just networking. He works with the big donors. Must be some kind of networking, I said. Haven't seen you laugh like that at my jokes in years. She rolled her eyes. Don't start, Liam. It's called being personable. It's literally my job. I let it go. 16 years of marriage teaches you when to push and when to back off. I still believed in her. That trust? Yeah, that was my first big mistake. After that night, Rachel's calendar somehow got even more crowded, constant last-minute meetings and sudden venue walkthroughs. She was always rushing, always running behind. Her phone might as well have been glued to her hand, and I couldn't help but notice how she always angled the screen away from me. Then came the passwords, new ones on devices that had never been locked before. I'm not proud to admit it, but I brushed it all aside. Told myself she was just stressed. Busy season. Nothing more. Because when you've built a life with someone, the last thing you want to believe is that they're tearing it down behind your back. Then came the governor's Christmas party. And that night? That was the turning point, the moment doubt turned into hard truth. But let me not get ahead of myself. Some storms don't come out of nowhere. They take their time, building strength until they finally break. This one had been gathering for a while, and I was standing right in its path. The governor's annual Christmas bash was no small affair. It brought together the state's elite politicians, CEOs, influencers, all dressed to impress and sipping champagne under crystal chandeliers. I'd handled security for the event 4 years in a row. I knew that mansion like the back of my hand, including the study on the second floor, a room that was clearly marked off limits to guests. I was doing a routine sweep when I heard voices coming from behind the heavy oak door. Quiet, but intense. A woman's laugh. That's all it took for my instincts to kick in. Guests in restricted areas? That was exactly what I was paid to stop. So I didn't knock. I had clearance. I opened the door, and there she was. Rachel, sitting on the governor's desk like she owned the place. And right in front of her, David Bradford, standing way too close, with his hand somewhere it absolutely shouldn't have been. They jolted apart like 2 high schoolers caught in the act. But I wasn't blind. I saw the smear of lipstick on his collar. My wife's shade. No mistaking it. Liam, she gasped, her voice shooting up an octave I'd never heard before. I was just showing David the first editions for a possible literary fundraiser. Sure, a literary fundraiser. My voice felt detached, like it belonged to someone else. In a restricted room, with the lights turned down? David adjusted his tie, still full of that smug charm. My apologies, Sinclair, he said coolly. Didn't realize this area was off limits. It's marked, I replied, keeping my tone steady even though I wanted to knock that smirk right off his face. As head of security, I'll have to report this violation. Rachel slid off the desk, her tone sharp. Liam, don't be ridiculous. You're overreacting. But it wasn't guilt in her eyes. Not even shame. What I saw was pure irritation, like I'd interrupted something she considered important. I need to finish my rounds, I said, stepping aside to let them pass. We'll talk about this at home. But that conversation never happened. Rachel faked some kind of emergency with the caterer and left early, with David, of course, claiming it needed her urgent attention. I stayed behind, finishing my shift like a professional. I didn't leave until 2:30 a.m., then drove home to a house that felt colder than usual. She didn't bother coming home until nearly 4. I sat there, nursing a bourbon, replaying the scene in my head over and over. By the time she finally walked through the door, the shock had worn off. What was left was colder. Sharper. Don't start, she said right away, tossing her purse on the counter like nothing had happened. It's not what it looked like. Then tell me, I said, watching her over the rim of my glass. What was I looking at, exactly, when another man's hands were halfway up your dress? You're being dramatic. She kicked off her heels, sighing like I was the one making things difficult. David and I were talking strategy, donor stuff. Yeah, we flirt. It's part of the job. Nothing happened. Rachel. I set the glass down slowly. I've made a career out of reading people, sizing up threats, spotting lies. Don't insult my intelligence. Her eyes changed then, cold, flat, unapologetic. Fine. Believe whatever you want, she snapped. I'm going to bed. She walked away, leaving me alone with my bourbon and the sinking realization that this wasn't just some bump in the road. This marriage wasn't cracked, it was crumbling. The red flags I'd ignored had turned into full-blown warning sirens. And now the only question left was, what was I going to do about it? In my line of work, suspicion isn't enough. You need evidence, hard proof. And after that night at the governor's mansion, I knew exactly what I was dealing with. But confronting Rachel head-on hadn't gotten me anywhere. She denied, deflected, played it cool. So, I did what I do best. I watched. I waited. A whole month went by. I smiled when I needed to. Played the part. Some might call it weak. I call it strategic patience. Then February rolled in, and with it, a snowstorm that shut down most of Philadelphia. Rachel claimed she was stranded at a client meeting. Said she couldn't make it home. I saw my chance. I did what I should have done weeks earlier. I started with her laptop. 16 years of marriage comes with certain perks, like knowing how she thinks. Rachel always based her passwords on her childhood dog's name, mixed with important dates. 4th try? Got it. Her inbox was just like her events, meticulously organized. Folders for work, friends, finances. Neat. Tidy. Nothing obvious at first. Until I spotted a folder named DB Events tucked inside a set of tax records. DB. David Bradford. What I found in there turned my stomach. Emails. Explicit messages. Romantic rendezvous disguised as business dinners. Hotel confirmations. And not just recent. The earliest one was from 9 months ago. I took photos of everything, timestamps, locations, attachments. Then I moved on to her iPad. There, in the messaging app, buried in the archived section, was a second conversation thread. Same story. More plans, more cover-ups. And a weekend trip to Chicago, just the two of them. One hotel room. The last piece of the puzzle came from her leather-bound planner. Rachel liked to keep things old school. Even with all her digital tools, she still wrote everything down by hand. Tucked behind her desk drawer, I found this year's calendar. Some dates were marked with a small V and a little heart. Those dates lined up perfectly with her client emergencies and late nights. And you know what? I didn't feel rage. What I felt was clarity. I returned everything exactly as I found it. Then I sat down in my home office to map out my next move. Like Sun Tzu said, every battle is won before it's ever fought. And I had no intention of losing this one. By the time Rachel walked through the door the next day, looking strangely refreshed for someone who supposedly spent the night on an office couch during a blizzard, I was ready. Rough night? I asked casually, handing her a cup of coffee. Horrible, she groaned. That couch was murder. Power went out too. I nodded, tucking her lie into the growing file in my head. Oh, right, that Chicago conference is coming up, isn't it? Her eyes flickered, just for a second, before she caught herself. Yes, big clients. Flying in from Europe. Probably 4 or 5 days. Need a ride to the airport? I asked, still smiling. She shook her head quickly. No. I'll take a car service. Easier with all my materials. Whatever works best for you. That afternoon, I made a call. Samantha, Rachel's younger sister. We'd always gotten along, and I had a feeling she knew more than she was letting on. But it wasn't Samantha who answered. It was my niece. Uncle Liam. Lily chirped. Are you coming to my recital this weekend? Mom says Aunt Rachel can't go because she's going to Chicago. In the background, I heard Samantha's voice, sharp and panicked. Lily, who are you talking to? And just like that, I had my confirmation. Now all that was left was execution. Everything changed the night before her so-called Chicago conference. I was already in bed when my phone rang. It was nearly midnight, and I didn't recognize the number at first. But when I answered, I heard a familiar voice, Rachel's assistant. Liam, I'm so sorry to bother you this late, Megan said, her voice strained and nervous. I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't important. I sat up, instantly alert. What's going on? It's about Rachel and David, she said, hesitating. You need to know something. I waited, heart pounding. David Bradford isn't just taking her to Chicago. They're planning to leave the country afterward. Vienna. I saw the tickets on his desk, one way. The words hit me like a sucker punch. How sure are you? 100%, she said. I overheard them talking about selling the business. Liam, I think they're planning to move. For good. And why are you telling me this? I asked, needing to understand her angle. Because it's wrong, Megan said firmly. My dad cheated on my mom. I watched it destroy her. I can't be part of something like this. After we hung up, I just sat there in the dark, letting it sink in. This wasn't just an affair. Rachel was planning to vanish. Leave everything behind, me included. Possibly stealing from her company on the way out. It was 12:45 a.m. She was still out client dinner, she claimed. That gave me more than enough time. First, I called my attorney's emergency line, something we'd set up weeks ago just in case. Then I reached out to my bank, executing the separation of our joint accounts, which I'd already prearranged. By 2:15 a.m., I'd secured all the important documents, changed the passwords on every shared account, and moved all my valuables to a secure location. The strangest part? I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel sad. I felt clear. It was the same focus I used during high-risk security operations. Identify the threat. Neutralize it. Secure the assets. At 3:10 a.m., Rachel finally walked through the door, smelling like an expensive cologne I don't wear. I stayed still, pretending to sleep. Let her enjoy one final night wrapped in the comfort of her lies. Because come morning, the truth was going to hit her hard. Saturday dawned with that bitter February chill Philadelphia's known for. I'd been up for hours, double-checking every step. Nothing left to chance. At 8:10 a.m., Rachel emerged from the bedroom, already dressed in a designer suit, wheeling the new luggage she bought last month. You're up early, she said, surprised. I thought you'd sleep in. It's Saturday. Wanted to see you off, I said, handing her a cup of coffee. Big conference and all. She took it slowly, eyeing me with suspicion. Right. Should be back Wednesday, maybe Thursday. Vienna is beautiful this time of year, I said casually. She froze. Her cup stopped halfway to her lips. What are you talking about? Your one-way tickets to Vienna. You and David. Right after your little Chicago act. Her face went pale. Just for a second. Then she switched gears fast. You've been spying on me? She snapped. Going through my stuff? That's low. Liam, even for you. Lower than 9 months of cheating? I said calmly. Lower than trying to drain our accounts and abandon your marriage? The fact that I didn't raise my voice, that I stayed perfectly calm, clearly rattled her. You don't understand, David and I. Save it, Rachel. I understand just fine. I've seen the emails, the hotel reservations, the business sale plans. I stared at her. The only thing I don't understand is how you threw away 16 years so easily. Her expression shifted. The fake concern, the guilt, the charm gone. Just like that. Now she looked like someone I didn't recognize. Fine, she said coldly. Yes, David and I are together. He appreciates me. He respects my ambition. We're building something real. Something exciting. Built on lies and stolen money, I added. Classy. She pulled her purse onto the counter and yanked out a white envelope. I was going to mail these before leaving, she said, tossing it toward me. But since we're being honest, divorce papers. Already filed. I'm not coming back, Liam. There it was. That smug smile. She thought she'd won. Thought she'd caught me off guard. I opened the envelope, glanced at the papers, then looked up and smiled. Let's see how your lover feels when he realizes there's nothing left to steal. Her face twitched. The confidence faltered. What do you mean? Rachel, I said gently, our accounts were separated yesterday. You no longer have access to my pension, my investments, or my savings. The house is in my name alone, I said. Check the refinancing papers you signed last year without reading. I saw the panic flicker in her eyes. You can't do that. I already did, I replied, calm as ever. Oh, and David's wife? She got a package this morning. Her brows furrowed. Copies of your emails. Your little getaway plans. Bank transfers. Business transactions. Everything. I leaned back as her grip on the counter tightened. His personal and business accounts should be frozen by now. You're bluffing, she muttered, trying to sound sure, but her voice shook. I took out my phone and showed her the confirmation emails from my attorney. I've spent 2 decades protecting high-value clients. Did you really think I wouldn't know how to protect myself? That was the final crack. She fell apart right there in the kitchen. Her whole facade crumbled. You've ruined everything, she whispered, then grabbed her phone and frantically dialed David. No answer. She tried again. And again. Nothing. I just sat there, sipping my coffee like it was any other Saturday morning, watching her world come apart. What did you do? She demanded, her voice rising with desperation. Nothing illegal, I said. Just made sure the right people had the right information. His wife, his business partners, the IRS. She stared at her phone as it buzzed. One new text. And then, her face went pale. His accounts are frozen. His wife changed the locks, she whispered. He says it's my fault. That I must have slipped up. David sounds like a guy who always needs someone else to blame, I said. Not exactly a long-term type. Her anger flared. You had no right. This was my chance at real happiness. Happiness built on destroying someone else's life doesn't count, I said. And it's sure not something I was obligated to sit back and watch happen. Another buzz. Another message. She stared at it like it punched her in the gut. He's backing out, she said softly. Says it's all too messy now. He's staying with his wife. I wasn't surprised. Men like David were great at pretending to be brave until real consequences came knocking. She looked up at me, stunned. What am I supposed to do now? I stood and picked up the divorce papers she'd thrown at me earlier. That's not my problem anymore. I'll have my lawyer reach out to yours. I can't afford a hotel, she said, barely above a whisper. Everything I have is tied up in the business. We just signed a lease on a new office space. And for a moment, just a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Maybe you should have thought about the consequences before involving yourself in such complicated situations. I paused, then added, you can use the guest room. 7 days. After that, you're on your own. I turned to leave. I did love you once, you know, she called after me, voice cracking. I stopped in the doorway. Didn't turn around. The difference is, Rachel, I loved you up until yesterday. You stopped loving me 9 months ago and just kept pretending. That might make you a better actor, but it makes me the better person. Walking away from 16 years of marriage should have felt like tearing my life in half. Instead, it felt like setting down a load I'd been carrying way too long. The woman crying in my kitchen over another man wasn't the woman I married. Maybe she never really had been. A week later, I came home from work to find the guest room empty. No note. No forwarding address. Fine by me. Clean breaks heal faster. That night, I poured myself a bourbon and sat on the back deck, watching the sunset paint the Philadelphia skyline in burnt orange and gold. That's when my phone rang. Samantha, Rachel's sister. We'd always gotten along, but I hadn't heard from her since the blow-up. Liam, she said, as I answered. Got a minute? For my favorite sister-in-law? Always. Probably your only sister-in-law now, she said, almost laughing. Anyway, I wanted you to hear this from me. I could hear the shift in her tone. Rachel showed up at my place 4 days ago. Said she needed a place to stay while she figured things out. Let me guess, you said no? Yep, Samantha said flatly. Turned her away. That caught me off guard. You turned your own sister away? My sister stopped deserving loyalty when she planned to rob you blind and disappear with that walking midlife crisis. Mom and Dad feel the same. They won't take her calls either. I sat there in stunned silence. I hadn't expected her whole family to take a stand. Samantha continued, Honestly, it wasn't that hard. Remember Thanksgiving, 3 years ago? When I discovered my ex was spending time with his assistant? Yeah, I said. You were a mess. Well, Rachel told me I should stay. Said marriage is compromise. Funny how that only applies when she's not the one doing the compromising. I chuckled, even if there wasn't much joy in it. Where is she now? I asked, despite myself. Probably a hotel, she said. That's what she told me, anyway. Or maybe she's crashing on some coworker's couch, Samantha added. Point is, no one's bailing her out. Actions have consequences. After we hung up, I sat there for a moment, feeling something I hadn't expected, gratitude. Samantha's support actually moved me. In my line of work, I'd watched plenty of powerful people stay afloat not because they were innocent, but because they were surrounded by people too afraid or too comfortable to call them out. Rachel had assumed her family would cover for her too. Turns out, they had limits. The next morning, my attorney called with an update. Rachel's lawyer had filed for an emergency hearing, trying to contest the financial separation. Judge denied it, he said. Everything stays frozen until the divorce is final. And her claim on the house? Dismissed. The refinancing was clean. She signed it, I confirmed. She did, he replied. Even if she didn't read the fine print, she signed voluntarily. Unless she can somehow prove coercion, and she can't, it's all yours. It felt like a heavy pressure had finally eased off my chest. All those years she mocked me for being too cautious, too paranoid, with legal protections. Well, those safeguards were paying off. That afternoon, I was reviewing security protocols for a high-profile diplomatic visit when my receptionist buzzed in. Mr. Sinclair? There's a Megan Foster here to see you. Says it's important. I knew the name right away, Rachel's assistant. The one who gave me the heads up about the Vienna trip. She walked in looking nervous but determined. I got fired yesterday, she said, sitting across from me. Rachel said I betrayed her. Did she give a reason? She didn't need to, Megan replied. I was the only one who ever saw the Vienna tickets. She squared her shoulders. I'm not sorry. I know it cost me, but what they were planning, it was wrong. I appreciate you telling me, I said honestly. So, how can I help? I need a job, she said, straight to the point. I've got experience. Logistics, client coordination, scheduling. I raised a hand. Actually, I might have a spot. My team's looking for an administrative coordinator. Someone sharp, discreet, and organized. Her eyes widened. Are you serious? Dead serious. You had the chance to look the other way and didn't. That matters. She left with a job offer and paperwork in hand. And I sat there thinking how moments like these show you who people really are. Rachel had shown me her true self, but so had Samantha and Megan and a few others who chose integrity over convenience. 5 weeks passed. Life settled into a new rhythm. Work kept me busy, especially with all the diplomatic events on the calendar. Home was quieter, but peaceful. I threw myself into renovating the kitchen, something Rachel had put off for years, despite our healthy bank account. I was flipping through a cabinet hardware catalog when my phone rang. Brandon, my cousin. He works in financial crimes with the state police. You sitting down, Liam? He asked. Should I be? Probably. Remember those rumors about David Bradford misusing campaign funds? Yeah. Thought they were just gossip. They weren't. Turns out your evidence package kicked off something big. They audited his accounts. Found everything: donor fraud, tax evasion, money laundering. He's been skimming from campaigns for years. I set the catalog aside, trying to keep up. And Rachel? I asked quietly. Still fuzzy on how much she knew, Brandon said. But she benefited. Trips, designer stuff, expensive dinners, all funded with dirty money. I didn't say anything right away. I'd always known her lifestyle had gone into overdrive lately, but I assumed it was just her business doing well. There's more, Brandon added. David tried to flee the country yesterday. Airport police caught him at Lansing. He cracked an interrogation, claimed Rachel was the mastermind. Said she manipulated him. Classic David, I muttered. Point the finger the moment it gets real. Yeah, well, they searched Rachel's new place this morning. Found paperwork on offshore accounts David had set up. She was arrested about 3 hours ago. I didn't know what to say. I'd braced for fallout, sure, but prison? What now? She's being booked on conspiracy charges. Might be more, depending on what they find in the financial trail. Just thought you should hear it from me before it breaks on the news. After we hung up, I wandered the house, absorbing it all. The woman I'd built a life with, now facing prison time. I should have felt vindicated. But all I felt was a weird, heavy mix of emotions I couldn't fully unpack. That's when the doorbell rang. I opened it, and there she was. A woman I'd never seen before. She was dressed sharp, professional, no nonsense, and wore a serious expression. "Mr. Sinclair, I'm Sophia Mitchell with the FBI's Public Corruption Unit," she said. "Sorry for dropping in like this, but we need to ask you a few questions about Rachel Sinclair and David Bradford." I invited her in and offered some coffee, which she accepted. We sat in the living room while she explained how the investigation was expanding, political fraud tied to multiple campaigns David had worked on. "To be clear, we don't believe you were involved," she said, "but you might have information that could help." "I'll tell you whatever I can," I replied, "though Rachel and I haven't exactly been chatting lately." She nodded. "So I've heard. And for what it's worth, your evidence helped crack open a case we've been working for months." For the next couple of hours, I answered her questions, handed over more documents, and helped piece together a timeline of things that had never quite added up during my marriage. Through it all, I couldn't help but be impressed by Agent Mitchell. Sharp, professional, thorough. As she stood to leave, she handed me her card. "If you think of anything else, call me." Then, after a brief pause, "I'm sorry about your marriage. No one deserves that kind of betrayal." 5 months after Rachel's arrest, life had settled into something steady. The divorce was finalized. The kitchen was finally renovated, and my firm had landed a string of major international contracts. Progress, slow, steady, and earned. One afternoon, as I was prepping for an upcoming diplomatic summit, Sophia called again. By then, we'd developed a kind of professional friendship, met up for coffee a few times, usually just to talk shop or share case updates. "Liam, I've got news," she said. "Rachel accepted a plea deal this morning. 20 months in minimum security. She's also agreed to cooperate with the broader investigation into David." I didn't say anything right away. It hit me strangely. No anger, no satisfaction, just quiet. That's a lot less than David's getting, I assume. Much less. He's staring down 15 to 20 years. Turns out he was running scams through multiple campaigns, using different women to front for him. Rachel was just the latest. That part took me by surprise. I knew she'd fallen hard for him, but to him, she was just another pawn. She was never special to him, was she? According to the evidence, no. She was useful, connected socially, professionally respected, and married to a guy with security clearance. She made the perfect cover. After we hung up, I stepped outside and walked my backyard, trying to let it all sink in. Rachel hadn't just betrayed me, she'd been used. She'd traded our life for a lie built on someone else's game plan. There was something bitterly fitting about that. My phone buzzed. A text from Samantha. "Heard about Rachel's plea deal. You okay?" "Better than expected," I replied. "Having dinner with the girls tonight, but free tomorrow if you want company." Funny how that friendship had grown. What started as family support had turned into something genuine. We'd had several dinners together by now, sometimes with our daughters, sometimes just us, talking about life, healing, what came next. Later that night, Sophia called again. "Sorry to bother you after hours," she said, "but I wanted to ask something unofficial." "Sure. That security conference in Baltimore next month. Are you still presenting?" "Planning to." "What?" "I'll be there with the bureau. Thought maybe we could grab dinner after." "Not for work." It caught me off guard, but not in a bad way. "I'd like that," I said, smiling as I hung up. Life has a funny way of opening new doors when you least expect it. Exactly 1 year to the day after Rachel handed me those divorce papers, I stood on the balcony of my hotel room in Baltimore, watching the city lights flicker on as the sun dipped behind the skyline. My presentation at the International Security Summit had gone better than I'd hoped. A few foreign agencies had already reached out. The future looked solid. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. "Still on for dinner? Reservations at 8. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied. Over the past few months, we'd grown closer, slowly, naturally. What started as two professionals on opposite sides of an investigation had shifted into something more personal. She understood the demands of my work. More than that, she brought a kind of honesty I hadn't realized I'd been missing. As I adjusted my tie in the mirror, I couldn't help but reflect on the road I'd traveled to get here. The betrayal, the chaos, the slow climb back to myself. And somewhere in all that, I'd rediscovered things I'd forgotten: my independence, my clarity, my ability to trust my gut. Samantha had called yesterday with one final update. Rachel had been transferred to a minimum security facility in Massachusetts. Apparently, she was already playing the model inmate. She'll probably write a memoir and launch a comeback the second she gets out, Samantha joked. Thing was, I didn't care. Rachel had made her choices. I'd made mine. We were both living with them now. And as for me, well, I was finally at peace. Of course, my consequences included something a bit unexpected. Dinner with a smart, honest woman who actually saw me for who I was, and liked what she saw. Down in the hotel lobby, Sophia was waiting. She looked elegant in a simple black dress, and her whole face lit up when she saw me. How's it feel to be the star of the conference? She asked as we headed toward the restaurant. Hardly the star, I chuckled. Though the guy from the Joint Chiefs did seem pretty interested in our new threat assessment model. Dinner was easy, comfortable. We talked about everything: work, family, travel, books we'd been meaning to read. It was the kind of conversation that just flowed, natural and real, with someone who wasn't playing games. As dessert arrived, Sophia reached into her purse. I've got something for you, she said, handing me a small envelope. Inside was a newspaper clipping. David Bradford had been sentenced 22 years. Figured you might want some closure, she said. I folded the clipping and slid it into my jacket pocket. I got closure the day I changed the locks, I said. But, thank you. Later, as we walked back through the quiet streets of Baltimore, the monuments glowing under the night sky, Sophia reached out and slipped her hand into mine. It felt right. Not like trying to patch over something broken, but like starting fresh with something real. Something honest. I knew life wouldn't always be this smooth. There'd be more hard days, complicated choices, maybe even heartbreak again. But I'd finally learned something that mattered. It's better to face the truth, even when it hurts, than to live comfortably inside a lie.